How could I have known that single moment would change everything? It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind of quiet day when nothing ever seems out of place. Michael was at work. The house held that familiar stillness it always did when it was just Ethan and me. I was folding clothes, moving lazily from room to room, when a sound cut through the silence. At first, I thought it was music, a faint melody, maybe a video playing somewhere upstairs. But as I carried the basket up the staircase, it hit me it wasn't music at all. It was something else. Something that made me freeze mid-step, my fingers tightening around the wooden railing. The hallway stretched ahead, dim under the fading afternoon light streaming through the blinds. Ethan's bedroom door wasn't fully closed. It was slightly ajar, as if offering an invitation or a warning. I don't know why, but instead of stepping back, I moved closer. My chest tightened as the sound grew clearer, more distinct. I told myself I was imagining things. He was 24 now, an adult with a life of his own, entitled to privacy. Maybe he was on a call, watching something, doing something completely ordinary, but some mix of curiosity and something I couldn't name drove me forward. I leaned in just enough to see. And then, everything stopped. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, his laptop casting a harsh glow across his face. His hands moved quickly, nervously, and in that instant, there was no denying what he was doing. The realization hit me like freezing water, yanking the air from my lungs. I should have turned away, closed my eyes, gone back down the stairs, but I didn't. For one unbearable heartbeat, I stood frozen, staring at a reality I never thought I would encounter. Part of me was shocked to witness it, but another part was shaken. My stomach knotted. My thoughts whirled. A storm of emotions surged within me. Shock, guilt, longing, confusion, none of them strong enough to ground me in reality. Ethan shifted abruptly, as if sensing my presence. His eyes flicked toward the door, and in a single heartbeat, our gazes met. The color drained from my face while his crumbled into panic, heat rushing to his cheeks in an instant. He lunged to close the laptop, his hands shaking so violently it almost slipped from his lap. "Clara," he gasped, his voice breaking. I thought the door was closed. I couldn't answer. My throat was dry, my heart pounding so loudly I feared it would betray me. "I'm sorry," he whispered, fragile, fraying under the oppressive silence filling the room. I stumbled backward, my heel catching the floor as I tried to steady myself. Words escaped me, faint, incomplete words I didn't even understand. I shouldn't have, but I never finished them. My hands trembling, I clutched the railing and descended the stairs. Each step pressed heavier than the last, my pulse hammering in my ears. By the time I reached the bottom, I pressed the laundry basket to the counter and buried my face in my hands. My breathing was shallow and uneven. What had I just witnessed? And why did it feel like nothing in this house would ever be the same? I tried to continue as if nothing had happened, wiping counters, folding laundry into neat piles, performing chores that suddenly felt meaningless. My hands moved, but my mind remained trapped upstairs, replaying those moments endlessly, a loop I couldn't break. Perhaps deep down, I didn't want to. The air in the house felt heavier now, almost alive, charged with tension. Every sound was amplified, the groan of the stairs, the hum of the fridge, even a distant bark outside. When Ethan finally appeared at the top of the staircase, I froze. He paused, one hand gripping the railing, eyes cast downward. He no longer carried the calm, confident air of the young man I knew. He looked smaller, weighed down by something neither of us could deny. "Clara," he murmured softly, barely audible. I forced myself to meet his gaze, my chest tight. "Ethan," I whispered, voice low and unsteady. He shifted uneasily, descending a few tentative steps. His collar was crooked, his hair tousled, as if his hands had raked through it endlessly in the past moments. When he finally reached the bottom, he still avoided my eyes. "I'm sorry," he blurted abruptly. "I didn't mean for you to see that. I thought the door was closed. I wasn't thinking." I pressed my lips together, searching for words. Nothing could have prepared me for this. "You don't have to explain," I said finally, cutting through the heavy silence. "You're an adult, Ethan. I shouldn't have walked in without knocking." His eyes lifted, wide, caught between relief and shame. "But it was wrong," he whispered, shaking his head. "It felt like I crossed a line with you, and I didn't mean—" "I know you didn't." I cut in quickly, sharper than I intended. My thoughts churned too violently for coherent words. Silence pressed down on us again, heavier than before. I felt his gaze cling to me, but I wouldn't meet it. My eyes fixed on the countertop, on the neat stack of folded laundry that suddenly felt like an anchor. "I'll give you space," he murmured, his voice breaking. "I don't want to make this worse." Without waiting for my reply, he turned and retreated upstairs. I watched him disappear. The look he had given me charged, filled with something raw. Desire it lingered in my mind, stripping me bare with a single glance. I leaned against the counter, legs trembling beneath me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one in control in this house. I felt like someone teetering on the edge of a cliff, unsure if the ground beneath me would hold. That night, we said nothing. We drifted through the house like strangers, shadows brushing past each other in the same rooms. At dinner, we sat across from one another in silence, the scrape of utensils louder than any words could be. The tension was undeniable, buzzing between us. Each time we passed a dish, or our eyes met, something shifted inside me. A part of me wanted to break free, and I knew deep down this wasn't finished. The quiet pressed harder, suffocating. Each glance at him dragged me back to what I had seen, his flushed face, the trembling hand all seared into my memory. I told myself to forget, to erase it, but the image clung stubbornly. When I carried my plate to the sink, my hands shook. I poured a glass of wine and sat before the TV, staring blankly, lost. When Ethan excused himself and disappeared down the hall, I assumed that was the end. But 10 minutes passed, then 15. Without thinking, I rose. My feet carried me down the hall, stopping at his door. A band of light spilled beneath it. I raised my hand, hesitated, questioning what on earth I was doing. I should have turned back. I should have returned to the couch. My knuckles tapped lightly on the wood. "Ethan," I whispered. A pause. Then his voice, low and guarded. "Yeah." I pushed the door just wide enough to peek in. He sat on the edge of his bed, a blanket bunched across his lap like a shield. When his gaze met mine, his eyes were wide, cautious, but something else shimmered there too. Something I didn't want to admit noticing. I stepped inside, shutting the door softly behind me. "We need to talk," I said, trying to sound steady, though the words trembled. I wanted to tell him plainly that what I'd seen was unacceptable, but I wasn't sure if it came from anger or something else. "I didn't mean for you to see," he rushed out, hands twisting the blanket. "I didn't plan it. It just happened." I swallowed hard. "I know. But Ethan, you can't." My voice faltered, the rest caught in my throat. "You can't do this. You can't look at me like that. You can't make me feel like this." He lifted his gaze, piercing straight through me. "It's not just that," he said carefully. "It's not just fooling around. I've thought about you more than I should." My chest tightened. His words hit sharper, heavier than I ever imagined. For a fleeting moment, I felt myself falter. A part of me wanted to close the space between us. I shook my head, though my voice wavered as I spoke. "You don't mean that." "I do," he replied. Steady now. When I turned to leave, his words followed me low, certain, impossible to escape. "I don't care if it's wrong. I just want you to know how I feel." Every part of me screamed to be stronger, to hold the line and never let it slip. But why did it feel like I already had? I walked away, yet sleep never came. I tossed and turned for hours until my feet carried me toward his door. That's when I knew turning back was impossible. The next days dragged like punishment. I realized how much I had missed being wanted. I craved to erase every boundary. I needed him in ways words could no longer express. And I knew he wanted the same through the way his hand brushed my leg sometimes, through the way his eyes lingered across the table at dinner. He was waiting for me, and I went. That night, when Ethan came home drunk and Michael was away on a trip, I followed him to his room as he stumbled unsteadily. I only wanted to help him, because he was so drunk. I tried to steady his arm, but he was heavy. After a struggle, I guided him inside. We stood for a moment facing each other, and then Ethan stepped closer. He was so near. I wanted to step back, but I couldn't. The pull toward him was too strong, and I moved closer too. Then his lips found mine. Every doubt vanished. His body pressed against mine, the only thing I could feel. Clothes slipped away, neither of us caring about the line we were crossing. In seconds, we were on the bed, my heart racing. Ethan leaned over me, looking into my eyes, and smiled. Then the weight of him filled me overwhelming. My voice broke into cries as he moved deeper, further. He urged me to say his name, and I did again and again. I told him how good it felt, how I wanted him to take me, to let go. I shut my eyes and surrendered. I clutched the sheets, my body trembling and spasming, while he pushed my hand from my mouth. He said he had waited to hear these sounds, that he wanted to be the reason for them. The room burned with heat, heavy with everything we had buried, finally released. By the end, we were both breathless, spent. He was drunk, worn, and all I wanted was to hold him, to sleep beside him. That night, we lay together. By morning, I rose first. I slipped into the shower. Water ran over me, and though guilt flickered briefly, I no longer cared. My nerves tangled with a strange calm, my body easing into the reality of what had happened. Nothing would ever return to the way it was, and maybe I didn't want it to. I had no idea what might come next, how many more boundaries we might cross, but I knew this was only the beginning. I pushed the door just wide enough to peek inside. He sat on the edge of his bed, a blanket gathered across his lap like a shield. When his eyes met mine wide, cautious something else shimmered there too, something I didn't want to name. I stepped inside, closing the door gently behind me. "We need to talk." My voice wavered, fragile despite my intention to sound steady. I meant to tell him clearly that what I had seen earlier was unacceptable. Yet a small part of me wasn't sure if it came from anger or something else. "I didn't mean for you to see," he blurted, hands twisting the blanket. "I didn't plan it. It just happened." I swallowed hard. "I know, but Ethan, you can't." The rest of the words caught in my throat. "You can't do this. You can't look at me like that. You can't make me feel like this." He lifted his gaze, piercing straight through me. "It's not just that," he said carefully. "It's not just messing around. I've thought about you more than I should." My chest constricted. His words hit sharper and heavier than I ever expected. For a moment, I felt myself weaken. Part of me wanted to close the distance. I shook my head, voice cracking. "You don't mean that." "I do," he said, steadier this time. When I turned to leave, his words chased me, low, deliberate, impossible to ignore. "I don't care if it's wrong. I just want you to know how I feel." Every part of me screamed to be stronger, to hold the boundary and never let it slip. But why did it feel like I already had? I walked away, but sleep never came. I tossed and turned for hours until my feet carried me back to his door. That's when I knew turning back was impossible. The following days were torture. I realized how much I had missed being wanted. All I desired was to erase every line. I needed him in ways I couldn't explain. And I knew he felt the same through the way his hand brushed my legs sometimes, the way his eyes lingered across the dinner table. He was waiting, and I went to him. That night, when Ethan came home drunk and Michael was away, I followed him to his room. He stumbled clumsily, nearly falling. I only wanted to help, but he was too heavy for me to guide. After much effort, I got him inside. We stood for a heartbeat, facing each other, and then Ethan stepped closer. He was so near. I wanted to retreat, but I couldn't. The pull toward him was stronger than my will. I stepped closer, too. Then his lips met mine. Every doubt vanished. His body pressed against mine, consuming me. Clothes fell away, and neither of us cared about the lines dissolving beneath us. In moments, we were on the bed, my heart racing. Ethan leaned over me, eyes searching mine before he smiled. Then I felt him push deep inside. Overwhelming, relentless. My voice broke into cries as he moved further, filling me. He urged me to say his name, and I did over and over. I told him how good it felt, how I wanted him to take me completely. I closed my eyes and surrendered. I clutched the sheets, my body trembling and shaking. When I tried to stifle the sounds, he pulled my hand away. He whispered that he had waited to hear them, that he wanted to be the reason for every sound leaving my lips. The air grew thick with heat and need. Everything we had buried finally came alive. By the end, we were breathless, spent. He was drunk and worn, and all I wanted was to hold him, to sleep beside him. That night, we stayed together. The next morning, I woke before him and slipped into the shower. Water ran over me, and all I could think about was how good he felt. Guilt lingered, but I didn't care anymore. Nervousness tangled with calm. I let myself relax. Nothing could ever return to the way it was. And maybe I didn't want it to. I had no idea what might come next, how many more boundaries we might cross. But I knew one thing: this was far from over.